Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, if you're the kind of person who's ever spent hours getting a piece of software customized so it's just right for you, then you're going to get the story of Atom. Today, we're diving into the rise and fall of a text editor that, for a whole generation of developers, wasn't just a tool, it was a passion project. It's a story all about innovation, community, and yeah, what happens when a tech giant gets involved. And it all kind of came to a head with this one simple phrase on the official GitHub blog back in 2022. This is a tough goodbye. For a lot of people in the developer community, this was a legit shockwave. It meant the end of an era for a tool that so many had built their entire workflow around. So to really understand why this goodbye was so tough, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. So where did Atom even come from? Well, before it was this product with an end-of-life date, it was this really revolutionary idea. And that idea was centered on one single powerful concept: hackability. And this was the philosophy that changed everything. See, before Atom, if you wanted to customize your text editor, you often had to learn these obscure, specialized scripting languages. But Atom's idea? It was radical. What if you could change your most important tool using the exact same skills you use to build websites? You know, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This idea was a total game changer. GitHub's ambition for Atom, which launched way back in 2011, was crystal clear. This wasn't just going to be another tool. It was a promise. It was a promise of a modern, super flexible, and deeply personal coding environment that put all the power right back in the hands of the developer. And they really delivered on that promise in a few key ways. First off, Atom was free and open source, which right away builds a ton of community trust. It worked on every major operating system, Mac, Windows, Linux, you name it. And since it came from GitHub, it had powerful Git version control baked right in. But the real magic? That came from the thousands of community-built packages that let you add pretty much any feature you could dream up. But here's where the story takes a really wild turn. The most profound impact Atom had on the world wasn't actually the editor itself. Nope. It was this accidental byproduct of its creation, a piece of technology that would go on to power thousands of applications we all use every single day. Okay, so here's the technical magic that made it all possible. Instead of building a normal native application, the team at GitHub built Atom using web technologies. So every window, every little pane, every single button, it was all just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript running inside a special version of the Chromium web browser. And this journey from an app to a framework is just incredible. The foundation they built just for Atom, which they originally called Atom Shell, turned out to be so powerful and so useful that they realized they had created something much, much bigger. So they decided to release it as its own separate open source project, and they renamed it Electron. And it just exploded. Today, apps you probably use every day, like Slack, Discord, even Microsoft's VS Code, they all run on the framework that was born just to make Atom possible. So this brings us to a really pivotal moment in Atom's history. The whole landscape was about to shift, big time, and it set the editor on a brand new and ultimately final course. In 2018, Microsoft bought GitHub for a cool $7.5 billion. This immediately sent these huge waves of concern through the Atom community. And why? Well, because Microsoft already had its own hugely popular text editor, Visual Studio Code. Now, they made assurances, said that Atom's development would continue, but just 4 years later, that promise came to an end. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the problem. After the acquisition, Microsoft owned two massively popular, open source, and deeply customizable text editors. The irony was almost unbelievable. Both of them were built on the exact same technology, Electron, the very framework Atom had created. They were direct competitors, and now they were living under the same corporate roof. So yeah, this internal competition, combined with a major shift in the software world towards cloud-based tools, ultimately sealed Atom's fate. It led to the official announcement that its incredible journey was finally coming to a close. So what was the official reason? Well, GitHub announced a strategic shift. They said they wanted to pour their resources into cloud-based development tools, specifically their own GitHub Codespaces and, of course, the wildly successful Visual Studio Code. In a world that was rapidly moving to the cloud, a desktop-first editor like Atom just wasn't the top priority anymore. And the timeline was swift. It was definitive. GitHub announced the sunset on June 8th, giving the community just a 6-month window to migrate all their projects and find new workflows before the final end date of December 15th, 2022. And sunsetting meant a lot more than just stopping development. This was the dismantling of an entire ecosystem. The code repository was frozen, the package manager that gave Atom all its power was turned off, security updates stopped, even collaborative features just went dark. So, while the app might still launch on your computer, its heart was effectively being removed. But you know what? The story doesn't totally end there. Even after being officially sunsetted, Atom's spirit and its groundbreaking technology is still thriving in new and pretty unexpected ways. Because in the world of open source, the community often refuses to let a good idea by. A fork called Pulsar was quickly created to continue development directly from Atom's original code. One of Atom's original creators is now building what he calls a spiritual successor, named Zeed, aiming for the same vibe but with modern, super-fast tech. And then, of course, there's Electron. This framework is Atom's most widespread and influential legacy, powering a huge chunk of the desktop apps we all use today. Atom's story, from this revolutionary idea to a global community and then finally a casualty of corporate strategy, it leaves us with a really critical question for the future of software. What happens when a community's passion project collides head-on with a corporation's bottom line? It's something to think about.